Staffing Playbook Podcast, your go-to resource for navigating the dynamic world of staffing and HR. I'm your host, Stephen Farrell. Join me each week as we dive deep into the strategies, insights, and stories that shape the staffing industry. From the latest trends to expert interviews and practical tips, we'll equip you with the right tools and knowledge to succeed in the staffing industry. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, the Staffing Playbook is here to help you play your best game. Let's get started.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Staffing Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Farrell. We are in episode 10. Today, we're going to talk about strategies to reduce turnover in a high-volume production facility. I am so excited about our guest today. I have a senior HR leader, someone that I've worked with personally in the past, Angie Johnson. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm really good. Thank you, Stephen. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I am thrilled. You know, when I posted on LinkedIn, like, hey, I'm looking for some HR leaders, you know, that can come onto the show as a guest. I saw that you hearted my post and I immediately messaged you, like, hey, does that mean you're open to coming on? And you're like, yes.
Yeah,
So,
I'm glad to be here.
we're excited to have you. This is an important topic. You know, we're entering Q4. You know, you come from years of, leading teams in high volume production facilities. And, I think it's perfect timing having you on the podcast because this is the first week of Q4 where all the craziness happens, where it's like, whatever hiring you've done or haven't done up to this point, you're kind of stuck with what you have, and you're just pushing through the rest of the quarter.
Yeah.
I know you're not doing high volume staff recruiting right now in your current role, but do you miss the high volume craziness of Q4?
There are some days that I miss it, yes, but most days I appreciate the experience that I had for all those years. I have about 20 years in manufacturing. And so I'm grateful for the things that I've learned, but I'm excited to be where I'm at. It's very, very different. And
different pace, right?
Yeah, I work with a great group and I'm learning new things. So it's good.
I love really that. Good. Yeah. From a staffing side, it really slows down on getting new customers, that kind of happens throughout the year. But what we really focus on is like making sure people show up on time and they're punctual and they're doing a great job and just helping, companies get their production needs met. So it's a crazy time in the light industrial space right now.
Oh yeah.
We've got one customer, we're getting ready to onboard about 250 associates for a 6 to 8 week project.
Oh, wow.
For Q4. So it's a race. It's going to be fun.
That's crazy.
So this is a perfect topic for those that are tuning in. We are going to be talking about reducing turnover in high volume production facilities. Angie, throughout your career, you've led large HR teams. You've been responsible for hundreds of people, and I've seen it firsthand. The way you've analyzed turnover and looking at retention initiatives. And I've seen you kind of work your magic to dissect the problems and come up with a very specific strategy to improve, attrition. And so given that I've seen you do it firsthand, I thought you'd be a perfect guest for this episode. So without further ado, I say I've got quite a few questions. I want to jump into this because there's people listening now that are responsible for a large group of individuals that they're worried about turnover in Q4 because it's a critical time for many companies. So are you up for the discussion? You ready to jump into it?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right, so let's start with understanding the issue, which is turnover, and in a large production facility. Can you tell me, looking back at when you had maybe some of your larger facilities that you're responsible for, can you tell me the moment that you realized, turnover was a major issue in your production facility, and what were those initial first steps that you took to start addressing it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. So I think there's a couple of different things that you can know off the top of your head, or just from data that shows that you're having issues, having turnover on the production floor. Of course, you have the number of openings that are so if it's on a different shift, you have the total number of openings. Also, I think another key performance indicator, KPI, is the number of ethics hotline calls that you have. But I think also, I do think so. I do think that attributes to turnover. I think that if you have employees who don't come to HR, I think that's the number one thing. If you don't have anyone coming to visit HR, whether that's with a question or a concern, or even just a problem that they're having on the shift, I think that there is a problem, and that will contribute to turnover on the production floor. One thing, I was in a plant that had about 1,600 employees, and it was all 3 shifts. So it was a big task to kind of understand what our main issues are. What problems are we having? No one was coming to HR. We would, come in the morning, have our morning meeting, and we would wait for employees to show up with questions or concerns, and we weren't getting anyone. And so some of the things that we did, my team got together and we talked about how can we, as HR, have a greater presence on the floor. Because as we all know, or should know, in HR, we're probably the least department people want to come to. Right?
I always feel like I'm getting called into the principal's office.
Yes. Message from HR. Right? Anytime you call someone to come to your office, the first thing they say is, "Am I in trouble?" Right? You never want people to feel that way. You want people to feel comfortable coming to talk to you, even if it's just to see how you're doing and to say hi. And so in this plant, one thing I tasked our team to do was we needed a presence on the floor. So it was a group of 4, a team of 4 that we had. And so we split up we always came in the morning at 7:00, worked till about 4 or 5. So we were missing the grave shift, right? Mm-hmm. And how can the grave shift feel comfortable to come to people they don't even know? How can they feel comfortable to ask questions to people?
Right, because HR traditionally is not there on the grave shift and only there for part of the swing shift. So you're missing a whole segment of people.
Correct.
By just working in the traditional HR schedule.
Yeah. And that typically tends to be the shift that you have the higher turnover on, is on the off shifts, whether that's a swing shift, but more importantly, the grave shift. So one thing we did was we switched our schedules around. So there was representation on all 3 shifts. So our team was tasked it was a big plant, but you had to do 1 loop around the plant right when you got there in the morning. So all of grave shift could see, hey, there's the gal from HR, right? There's a person who's walking through who doesn't necessarily need to be here, but she's just going to walk around here. She's just going to walk around, so they know, oh, that's a familiar face in HR, right? Wow. Another thing that we did was we put our pictures with our phone numbers on the time clock. A lot of times employees, when they work shifts, they come in and they come out. They want to leave just as fast as they can, right? Everybody has things to do after work. And I mean, we spend more time with people that we work with than we do our own family, right? So expecting employees to come after their shift is difficult. And so we put pictures and our phone number on the time clocks and said, we're here for you. If you have any questions, call us or text us. That worked out pretty good. I mean, at first we got a lot of calls 24/7, and we were excited that people were starting to feel comfortable. But then also we met with our maintenance department and put an initiative together to have what we called an HR kiosk. So when and I think it's been in every production company I've worked with. HR is on one side of the plant, and production seems to be on the other, like their
On the
locker
complete
room,
opposite end.
right? And so
Yes.
it's hard to have that time to walk over. You only have so much time on your break or your lunch. And so we worked with our maintenance department and set up a little kiosk. We even had our staffing agency sit out there with us, but one person was tasked to sit at that HR kiosk during shift change. And so you got to meet every person that came in and out of the building for day shift, swing shift, grave shift, and it was a lot easier for them to meet with you. It's having that openness for people to come to HR I think is so key in knowing and understanding your turnover. When you don't have that openness, when you don't have that camaraderie and relationship with the employees, they're not going to come to HR. And I think that's when you start to notice, hey, we're going to start to have a problem if we're not already having one right now.
Okay, so you just like dropped information bomb in the last 2 minutes. I want to dissect this for a second.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about the moment you realized turnover was a major issue in your production plant. So you looked at the open orders, that's an indication, hey, you may have open orders for cells and lines coming up, but when you have a bunch of open orders from turnover, that's your first, kind of sign that there's something going on. Yeah. Then you mentioned something I've never heard before, which I find fascinating, is the amount of calls coming into the hotline, the ethics hotline. Never would have thought of that as an indication of, hey, we've got a problem. Although it sounds pretty normal to look at that and go, hey, we got a problem. But yeah, to actually pay attention to those calls and then to dig in deeper to go, where is this coming from? What's the problem? I think that is really eye-opening. But then to go and realize that you've got a whole nother shift that's not accessible to HR, to then change your team's schedules to accommodate all the shifts to be present, I think is really notable for any HR leader that's listening in. But then that HR kiosk where you're there, right there on the floor, accessible to everyone, where they can come by and just ask questions, to have not just your name and number above the time clock, but to actually have a picture of your team so they know exactly who to look for. I don't think a lot of people do that. I think that's a pretty fantastic idea, because back to, that having that presence and being open, nobody likes HR. I hate coming to the HR office because it's like, I'm going to be in trouble, or do I really want to shed light on this issue? Like maybe I could fix it myself. Yes. When HR is really a partner, right? They're your advocate. So you should want to reach out. And I think, where you mentioned earlier, where the HR office is always furthest from the production floor where the people are working is a big mistake. And so the fact that you made your team accessible, where, you're literally right there with everyone on the floor, I think that's quite remarkable. We've got a comment here. While corporate thinks transactionally, a person's work is always personal to them. I love that. Thanks for the comment, David. So Angie, you take a very hands-on approach, and to tackle retention issues, which I think is phenomenal. You mentioned before that you went and took your team and went onto the production line, tried to understand what the work and what people go through. I really want to dive into this a little bit more and get a better understanding of that hands-on approach that you took as a HR leader in a high volume production facility.
Okay. Yeah. So you hear a lot when people are frustrated, or when employees come in and they can't understand why we can't hire people, and you have these conversations with individuals. And for me, I always would hear, you don't know what it's like working on the production floor. You have no idea what we do, what's going on, right? And that's always resonated with me. And I was talking to one of the managers of one of the plants that I was working in, and he said, him and I were just talking about some ideas, and I said, well, can I come and work on the floor? And at first he kind of laughed it off, and I was like, I'm serious. Like, I've never worked on a production floor a day in my life, but if I'm going to recruit for these individuals, if I'm going to help these people understand where they're coming from, I need to understand what they're doing. I understood the process from like, okay, we need to take this product and it needs to go here and then it ships to the other plant, right? I knew the
Yep.
overall view of what the purpose was, but the details of it, I didn't understand. And so he arranged for me to actually go and work in one of his production cells. And it was only going to be for a couple of hours, maybe an hour or two. And I remember it was, I met with the line lead. She was super excited. You could tell she was a little nervous though, but she was
Yeah,
super
I'd be
excited.
nervous.
Oh, yeah. And I had just started in this production plant. And so, you know, people didn't know who I was and hadn't seen me in meetings or anything. And I went to work on this production plant on this production floor. And it was crazy. I know that they have so much to do in so many seconds or so many minutes. And I was like, this is such hard work. I couldn't figure out, you have to have such dexterity. And I couldn't figure out how to put the parts in. Some of them were so little, I couldn't even hold them with my hand. I was slowing down the line. They're like, when are you going to get out of here, lady? And I'm, as you know, Stephen, I'm super chatty. So I'm just sitting there and they didn't know who I was. I mean, like I wasn't introduced or anything as, you know, this is Angie, the new HR manager. The manager just introduced me as, this is Angie, an employee here, you know. And
oh, really?
Yeah, so they had no idea. So you could tell that I was definitely slowing them down, but I really got to understand.
They're like, who made this hire? Gee.
I know. But, you know, as we were going from, they have different sections within the line or within the cell, and I would go to different sections, and the trainer was just so good, just so hands-on with me, trying to help me, being super patient with me. And, you know, I was sitting there chatting, trying to figure it out and trying to multitask and whatnot. And I learned a lot. You know, I learned some things that I was able to take with me the rest of my career, and things that really changed my perception. I remember working really hard, and then I had been there about an hour, and I had to go to a meeting. And so I said, "Boy, guys, I'm sorry, but I gotta go." And I remember one of the ladies that I was working with, she's like, "Don't quit. It's not that bad." And she was like, "It'll get better, I promise." She's like, "I know your hands hurt. And there's a lot of like RMI issues, but it will get better. Just work your hands." I'm kind of going down the whole route of helping me safety wise, which I appreciated. And then I said, "Oh no, I'm sorry. My name's Angie. I'm the new HR manager." And Stephen, I have to tell you, it made me really sad because she had this look of fear in her eyes. And she just started to apologize. And she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry if I overstepped." And I said, "Absolutely not. Like, be open, be honest." And I loved the fact that I got to understand what they do every day. And I mean, I was only there for an hour, but my hands hurt all night. I remember just thinking, how do they do this 8 hours a day, right?
Yes.
And so, I mean, I remember they had to have so many parts out, 8 parts per minute. And so it was crazy just to think of that high volume and the stress that they're put under. And so I went back to my my staff and I said, "You guys, I think this is key that we truly understand what it is we're recruiting for and truly understand what it is our employees are going through every single day." I remember I went on a tugger route one time with one of our production control employees, and he was hauling butt. Like, he was awesome. And it was about 5:02 when we needed to stop, and we had a meeting, and both of him and I both had to attend. And so I thought, okay, perfect. We're going to be done. I am so tired. And he's like, "No, I think we can do one more route." And I was just like, I cannot do this. I'm so tired. It was a little embarrassing, but him and I gained a rapport and a relationship, and had such a great working relationship from then on out, because seeing the team out on the production floor, I mean, it wasn't often, but when we could, working on the production floor, making sure that we were there to help and actually seeking to understand, it went a long way. And they really appreciated it. And also, people weren't afraid after that. We're HR, we're just real people, right? We're just real people who come to work every day just like them. And try to do the best that we can. We're not always going to be right or do the right things, but we're trying.
That is such a neat story. It not only can you now relate to them and the struggles they go through, and like just the fact that 1 hour you were in pain the rest of the day, so now when you're talking to a new hire, you can be like, hey, it's going to take a while to acclimate, get your body used to this, but let me tell you my experience of just 1 hour and how much pain I was for a day. So just know I've been through what you're about to go through. It's normal, and just take plenty of breaks and rest your hands, and you'll build up the stamina. You'll get there. Be patient, but so you're very relatable to them. You understand what they go through, but now you're accessible to them. You're relatable for them, and you're not the scary HR anymore. You're someone that understands their job, and now you're all of a sudden more approachable.
Yeah, thank you. I loved it. It seemed to be such a success. And as I moved, I had HR reps who moved plants, and they incorporated that at their different plants. And I just think it's a great tool and a great thing to utilize to really help them know that you're here for them and to help them.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of what Brene Brown said. I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown. I'm a big fan of hers. Mm-hmm. But she talks about that leadership is not about a title or the corner office that's on the opposite side of the building. It's that willingness to step up, put yourself out there, lean into that courage, really lean into showing up for your team. You're in the trenches with them, and that's exactly you don't expect that from HR. You just expect being in trouble. Or holding you accountable, or HR compliance, right? You don't expect them to be in the trenches with you. That is so rare. And I don't think that's in the HR handbook. Yet here you are leading the way with your HR team out on the floor. I love it. Pon said, it's a superpower. Love it. She's our IT director at Yes. Thanks, Pon. So Angie, looking back at that experience that you just shared and some other experiences in your career, what are some of those key insights that your HR team and yourself gained from working on the production floor? And, you mentioned that kind of just changed your perspective, moving forward. What were some of, did that influence your future retention strategies and how you implemented them? What did that look like after you spent the time on the floor, continued that with your team? What were some of those influences, and how did it frame your retention strategies moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. So yeah, it definitely changed our outlook on things, right? And how can we help these individuals on the floor? How can we help these new employees that are coming on the floor, coming out on the floor? With our turnover, we noticed that the majority of individuals leaving were within 90 days, right? 60 to 90 days, which, when my team and I worked on the floors, we understood it like 60 to 90 days. I don't know if they can, sometimes I wasn't sure if I could handle it, right? Yeah. But what we did was we were noticing a high volume of turnover in our production control area, especially in those 60 to 90 days. And so what we did was one of our initiatives is we gathered a cross-functional team, had a workshop, and talked about how we can help these individuals that are just starting out, right? We hire individuals off the street. We hire individuals who are just graduating from high school, who have no production control experience. Most of them don't even know what a tugger is. And they're expected to understand it and know what to do in a high traffic area in record time, right? So we're just going to throw them to the wolves on day one. And so we had a workshop with the production control, this cross-functional team. One thing I do want to point out, it's so important that when you do these initiatives, when you're noticing you're having issues in an area, high turnover in that area, it's fine for HR and the leadership team to sit down and say, okay, this is what we think the problem is. I don't think you're not going to find out what the true problem is. You need people that are actually working it day to day, right? So getting employees who are brand new, or getting employees who, who've been here for 30 days, 60 days, 6 months, or several years, right? Getting them all together to truly understand what the problem is. And so one of the initiatives that we came up with was a production control training cell. So in the plant, we were able to section off an area and put together a 2-day training, pretty much, and where they would understand, one, what production control is, what its overall purpose in production and within the company, right? If they understand the impact that they're going to make every single day, not only just in production, but with the company overall, I think it can go a huge way, right? In orientation, new hire orientation, you'll learn about a lot of different things. That it's a lot of information at once, right?
Most of it.
Right? Yeah. But you never truly understand. They don't talk specifics about your certain role. And so in this production control training cell, we wanted them to understand how vital their role was to the business, right? And then the second day was a training course to where they would actually drive the tugger. And we put it in situations that it was, tight quarters, and they couldn't hit a rack, or they couldn't hit anything actually. And they had to run this training course. So we set this all up. At first, obviously you go back and you make tweaks and you make changes. But we started to see some great success. We weren't just, like I said earlier, throwing these production associates to the wolves, just kind of sink or swim. We were actually showing them how to be successful. We were setting them up with success. And so we were watching kind of how this played out, and we watched as our turnover was extremely high. It was one of the highest areas. Now, over 6 to 8 months, it was one of the lowest areas. Wow. And we were able to Yokoten it across to other plants, and not only in Utah but throughout the world. And so it was a huge success, and really helped our team, especially our production control team, in that turnover.
So that is incredible. So you recognize you had higher than normal turnover in a specific department, and you decided to pull together a lot of different department heads. You pulled employees of all tenure that are in that same department, and you held a workshop, and you started asking questions to figure out what is the root cause, right? What is the challenge here? And in response to the feedback, you added to your orientation additional 2 days of training just for that specific department. And that is what changed the tide on turnover.
Yeah. And one thing, we set individuals up to be the supervisor over these training cells. And there were some employees, unfortunately, that we didn't feel would be a good fit. After a while, if they had to repeat the training cell, if they repeated it after 3 times and still weren't a success, that supervisor had the option to find them another place within the production floor, right? So I think it gave that supervisor the autonomy to know, okay, this individual's not going to work. Let's put them somewhere else. They're going to be successful somewhere else. And so you weren't giving.
Or normally you would just let them go, right? Yeah. They didn't make it in this department. Why would they make it in any other department where the departments are so completely different? And so, to recognize that, hey, this person's not good here, but they can be good over here. And so it's about finding the right seat on the bus versus like, hey, we gave you 3 chances, you're out of here. You don't see that very often. I don't see that very often.
Well, yeah. And one thing too, Stephen, is it's not going to have the employees on the floor, the people who are really trying or who are trying really hard to do their job, and they don't have that responsibility to train someone and say, I'm going to make them fit because I don't have time to make sure to send them somewhere else, right? I need them now. Whereas when they go to the floor, they're ready. They're ready to go and have the tools that they need to be successful.
I love that. I just love the idea that you workshopped this and brought lots of different people into the conversation to really, diagnose the problem. It just seems like there was a lot of empathy in your approach, and that reminds me. I'm sure you're familiar with Simon Sinek. He's famous leadership author and speaker. On the philosophy of leadership, and he talks a lot about the how leaders really need to understand and care about the people that they serve. Because when people feel valued, they'll give more to their work. And I want to ask, was that your experience as well? Did you see people, feel valued because of this, and they gave more to their job and what they do?
Yeah, 100%. Especially those who were involved in the workshop itself. They were kind of the cheerleaders for the group. Like, this is going to work, you guys. This is gonna be great. They want, like, leadership, HR. They want our input. And as they could see that we valued what they had to say and valued their opinions and how to make improvements, you could tell it made a huge difference.
I like that. That brings me to my next question. In those retention workshops that you've done, what were some of those key themes that you focused on, and how did you make sure they resonate with employees? Like, key themes, were obviously, that I would see is communication, recognition, career growth, getting them involved in the discussion. What were some of those key themes that you guys focused on that really resonated with the employees?
Yeah, I think, definitely recognition, making sure that, that they knew, one, how much they were appreciated, how much we appreciated them and their input, right? I think a lot of times employees are afraid to voice their opinion or whatnot. And so showing recognition and showing them that we appreciate all that they bring to us and all the information that they provide is super helpful. I think everyone overall, in different forms, likes recognition, right? Likes to be recognized, likes to know that their opinion is valued. And so I think that's one key thing that we would do. We actually had the president of our company come and see, for example, this production control cell. And we asked the individuals from the floor who were part of the workshop to present this thing that they put together, this new initiative that they put together, to present that to the president of the company, who was in
No kidding.
Oh yeah.
The president of a multi-billion-dollar international company, and you've got your local frontline leaders presenting on their retention workshop.
Well, yeah, not even the leaders. I mean, they were just some of the production associates, and
Whoa.
They were scared. We had to do a couple of run-throughs, but they appreciated the opportunity. You could really see a change in them from going to this kind of meek and timid individual and running through the presentation and just giving them the encouragement to be like, you can do this. You are awesome. You've done such great things. And then have them present and just have, the president of the company say, this is great. Thank you so much. And it's not just Angie from HR saying it, right? It's other leaders. And you have the VP of quality, the VP of HR or maintenance or whatever, facilities, them telling them as well, hey, we appreciate you. It just went such a long way, and you could totally see the confidence in them just building. And it was great. It was a great experience.
That is so empowering. Because it's easy as a leader to just, it's not like you're taking the credit, but it's like, hey, here's what we did. We did a workshop. We had all these great people involved, and here was the outcome. And that would have been totally fine, and the president would have been happy. But the fact that you empower these individuals to actually just speak for themselves on their contribution, that is going far above and beyond. And it really shows how much you care about your team and recognizing their efforts and how much of a difference they've made. I think that's remarkable. That's so cool, Angie. I had no idea. We worked together. I was an agency, you were my client, and so we worked together on a lot of retention, initiatives. But I've never heard this story. That is so.
Yeah.
I love that.
I was actually talking to a couple of the HR reps that I had while in Brigham City, and they were just mentioning some of the things that we've done. And yeah, it was exciting to reminisce on it and see, how we came together as a team, because I've been very blessed in my career to have a great team around me, and just very supportive, very kind, and just very approachable. And so I worked with a group of great people.
I love this. All right, so let's talk for a minute about measuring success. So we've just talked about how you can recognize turnover trends, workshop it, put together a plan to address it. A lot of hands-on, from the HR side that you normally don't see. So after everything's all said and done, what are some of the specific metrics or KPIs that you would then focus on to measure that success? Because it's one thing to have good feelings and give each other a pat on the back, but what were some of those key metrics that you tracked to really focus on the results?
Yeah, great question, Steve. Because I know, in KPIs every month we would have to put the number of direct and indirect people who left, and the reason, right? Which didn't really tell a story to me, or to my team. One day we got together and tried to really understand how can we measure if we are succeeding or not. And one thing that we did was, we put a map together of the production plant, and we would talk about every single person who left the company. We would meet every morning at 7:00. So within that 24-hour period, we would talk about every single individual. And every month we would update our map. And so after we talked about the individual, we'd put a sticker, and each sticker, there were 3 different colors. Each sticker represented a shift, so day, swing, or grave. And when we first started the map, you could see what area, like the J cell in a certain area, had a ton of people leaving on swing shift or on grave shift, right? Why is that? And then for the month, we would go out and try to figure out what that was. You could see from month over month how it drastically decreased over time, right? It was very rewarding to see map after map after map, and just kind of visual and have that visual management and see the turnover as it was decreasing right before your eyes, right? Yeah.
I want to pause for a second because I remember this map.
Yeah.
and you just brought me down memory lane. This is awesome. So I remember seeing this map for the first time and seeing these stickers, and I'm looking at my on-site manager going, "What is this?" And then she's explaining it to me. And as I joined some of those morning meetings, I remember whoever was leading the meeting at the time would be talking about each individual that quit or was let go.
Yeah.
And even if it was 4 or 5 at a time, like every person was discussed. And I remember, you asking, lots of follow-up questions, like, why did we let this happen? How come we didn't know about this earlier? Why haven't we talked to the supervisor or this line lead? And it was just a very, hands-on approach, getting into the details, because in a facility where you have 1,500 people, like you mentioned, it's real easy to let people become a number. And it's like, oh, we had 20 turnovers this month compared to last month we had 12, so we got a little worse, but there's no names attached. We're not talking about the root cause. We're just like, oh, it got worse or it got better.
Yeah.
The fact that you were talking about every person individually and trying to address it, and then to have that visual map of, it's like, now we can visually see like where the problem is really coming from. I thought I've never seen that before in my career, and I just thought that was brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good to see that we were what the team was doing was making a difference, and what we were doing was making a difference. So that's one thing I think that is rather than just the number of direct and indirect and why, really digging down and understanding why.
Getting to the root cause.
Yeah, and I think also, as I mentioned before in your first question, I think as you start to have more and more people come to HR, yes, it can be overwhelming. But I think that's also an indicator that things are going good. Like, you have people coming to talk to you, they feel comfortable bringing their concerns or just asking a question to HR. And then I also think the number of, going back to the helpline calls, I remember when I first started in a plant, we had 34 helpline calls a month, and which is outrageous. I mean, that could be one person's full-time job, right?
Right.
And over time, with the great team and the great work that we did, we were able to get it down to 2 to 3 a month, if that. And so I think that's also a key indicator. And let you know that are you succeeding or is there work to be done?
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to we've all heard this saying before, what gets measured gets managed.
Yeah.
And so, by you and your team focusing on these specific KPIs, you've got the map, you're talking about every individual that has quit or been let go. You're really keeping a pulse on the overall health of your workforce. And I think that's really important for people that are listening in that have a problem with turnover right now. It's like, you've got to get into the details. It's not just measuring, increases or decreases month over month, week over week. It's like, who's leaving and why? Let's address this and come up with a solution.
Yeah.
Angie, one thing I really appreciate about you is how much you focus on culture and how that really plays a huge role in retention. Are there any specific steps that you took to build a culture that makes people that want to stay? You mentioned a couple things with being out on the floor and the kiosks. Were there any other things that you did when it comes to culture to really make people want to stay?
One thing that we really focused on, kind of goes back to my first question is, your first question about having a presence on the floor. It was so important for my team and I to have a culture of an open door policy. But not only for us, we also wanted to make sure that the leaders had an open door policy. Having a culture that is bred by fear is a culture that no one wants to be part of, right? A toxic environment where people are afraid every single day that, are they going to get in trouble? Are they going to get yelled at? Are they going to be terminated? And, I think we're hardest on ourselves, and our mind can go 100 different places, right? With different things. Yeah. But that fear and that toxicity, that can really destroy a culture. So, I think some of the things that we did, having an open door policy, and especially I think the kiosk really helped. I talked about earlier, just having that openness and letting people know we're HR, but we are here for you. We're here to help you. We're here to make sure that you're successful. One of the initiatives too that we did to kind of help with that culture of having an open door policy, but also a culture of we want you to succeed. We created a direct mentor program. So where after the training cell, so we also had a production training cell as well, so production control training cell. And after the training cell, this individual was set with a direct mentor. So this was it's kind of twofold.
You're getting a big smile on my face right now because I love this.
Okay.
Please continue.
Yeah, it's kind of twofold, right? You find someone on the production floor that is a rock star, right? That's just not in a lead, like a line lead or anything like that, just someone who works hard every single day. And you want to reward this person. And so you're wanting them to be a direct mentor. I think you going to that individual and saying, hey, we appreciate all you do. And we want to know if you would like to be a direct mentor. Of course, we would give like a 50-cent an hour raise, different things like that. That would be, somewhat of a monetary initiative, but walking them through step by step of what their responsibilities were. It kind of almost put into them this sense of, I can really do this, right? Their confidence would boost. But then as we brought new associates in and they met with this direct mentor, this direct person, it was a culture that we felt an open culture, right? Yeah. They had someone to go directly to if they had any questions or concerns. They didn't feel like they had to go directly to the line lead or to the supervisor, that they could just ask directly. Or even if they had a question of HR and they didn't feel comfortable, they could ask this direct mentor, and the direct mentor could come to us. And it was a program it was an initiative that we started, and a program that we started that it's still going on today in that plant, and it's seen huge success, and something that I feel like every business needs to have that. Every business needs to have a mentor, someone who is there to help them, to show that new person the ropes, and just to help them feel welcome and just have an open culture of, we're glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming to work here, and we're excited to see the things that you can do. And so I think that's one of the things that kind of helps start that culture within the new people, but then also helps the employees that are there currently.
I remember that cultural shift when you guys, started this mentor program where all new hires were assigned this mentor. And, if you think about an elementary school, you grow up with all the same friends in the same neighborhood. And then you go to middle school and all of a sudden, nobody, and there's thousands of kids there, and you just feel really isolated. And if you're not very outgoing, it's going to be even more difficult for you to make connections. So it's almost like you have this like lunch buddy from middle school, on the job, someone that you can just talk to, become friends, build up a rapport, ask those questions that you're afraid to ask your supervisor, like, hey, like, how often can I really go to the bathroom, right? They said you can go when you need to, but is that the case, right? Am I going to get in trouble? You just ask, some of those questions that you feel dumb asking anybody else because, hey, this is your mentor. They've got your best interests in mind, and they're just your friend, helping you get on your feet.
Oh yeah. And in fact, you bring up a good point. We had some new hires that even asked, where is the restroom, right? Where's the quickest restroom that I can go to? Just simple stuff like that. It just goes a long way to have someone there with you to help you. Yeah.
And, culture is an important thing. I had read recently that 86% of millennials, so I'm a millennial, I'm an older millennial, but I'm still a millennial. They would take a pay cut to work at a company whose values align with their own. Yeah. So when you build such a strong culture, it's not just about retention. It's about making your company, your people, a place where people actually want to be, where they feel like they're accepted, and the best is being brought out of them. That you mentioned earlier, that fear, like people are really afraid of getting in trouble. And it's like if you can remove that fear where they're just comfortable in being themselves, that really helps with that culture really helps with retention.
Oh yeah. And I remember one thing I learned, when I was there, when I first started in that plant, I had an HR rep. She was amazing. And she would do some trainings with our managers and supervisors on, how to create a culture of openness with the new employees. And one thing she would always teach them that I've never forgotten is that people will decide whether or not they're going to stay with the company by their first lunch break. And to me, that was shocking. It's like, wow, those first few hours of an employee's first day is so crucial and so critical.
It really is. Yeah. That famous bathroom monster, breaker monster. It's like as soon as lunch hits, like, hey, where'd that new hire go? Like, they just disappeared.
Right.
Just like, when you were on the line for an hour, it's like, oh my gosh, my hands are killing me. Like you would have left for the bathroom and never came back.
Right.
We're coming up on time here. I just got a couple other questions I want to hit on. So just real briefly, how do we kind of balance the immediate need to reduce turnover, which is always like, there's always an immediate need, with the long-term goal of creating a more sustainable retention strategy? How did you approach this balance? Because I know you got pressure from on top to like fix this now, and knowing you the way I know you, you're thinking much longer term on how you can fix it in the long term. So how did you balance the short-term need with the long-term goals?
Yeah, I think one thing that's important is in doing so is making sure you have specific measurables in place, right? I think one thing our training cell with the production floor, we wanted to make sure, okay, if just kind of thinking, so if we brought a production associate, I kind of talked about this earlier, straight off of the street, right? Had no production experience. If we brought them to the floor, yes, that would fill our short-term need, right? Yep. Because we have a body and someone there to actually.
I got a pulse. Right? Okay, put them on the floor.
You're hired. But long term, we knew it was not sustainable, right? So putting different things into place and making sure that, okay, we were able to get these individuals through the training cell quickly, and then also having a, a log, or individuals that we could call right away that had gone through the training cell, that were ready to start. We didn't actually have numbers yet, but that we knew that would be successful to be on the production floor. We were able to put them in right away to fill our short-term needs, and then start that training roster and that roster again to be able to have people go through the training production cell and have them ready for when we needed associates, that we were able to bring them on right away. One thing I think that's key, and Stephen, you were very helpful with this, is this was only able to work if we had a great relationship with our staffing agency.
Yeah.
Making sure that they knew and understood what our short-term needs were, but then also how is this going to help us in the long run.
Yeah.
Without having a staffing agency that can support those kind of initiatives, you will not be successful.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
What I just heard from you is you don't care about the short term. You from day one, you're looking at long term. It's like, don't throw them on the floor because they have a pulse.
Yeah.
Put them on the floor when they're ready, when they've been set up for success. Yes, you're going to hear it from the line lead screaming because they're shorthanded, but you're just going to have the same problem over and over. You keep throwing people onto the floor that are not equipped to do the job and not trained properly. And so what you're telling me is you put all the systems in place to just, stop the short-term need of, I need someone now, to, hey, be patient, because when you get the right person, you're going to be able to reach your goals on the line.
Yeah. And one thing too, kind of going back to what you said earlier, Stephen, you have to communicate that to everyone on the floor, the line leads. You have to help them understand what it is, have their buy-in. Okay, this is what we're doing. Yes, we may struggle for a little bit short term, but it'll only be for a short minute as we get the long-term goals achieved, right? So just constant communication with everyone, and so everyone understands and everyone's on board.
That reminds me, Jim Collins, famous author, he said, good is the enemy of great. And, so it sounds like you've gone beyond just fixing the problems, but you really were building a great place to work. So you implemented what Jim Collins teaches, going from good to great.
Thank you.
All right. I want to wrap this up with you, Angie. Just, what's some advice that you can give to other HR leaders and plant managers who are really struggling right now with high turnover, and they want to make a difference in their retention efforts? What are some tips that you can give those people?
Okay. Yeah, I think the first tip that I would give is really seek to understand what it is that your employees go through every single day. If you're having high turnover in one area, say it's in maintenance, production control, whatever it is, find out what that is. Do a go and see. Find out. Don't just, I hate sitting in my office every single day, and I would hate sitting in my office every single day, not going out to the production floor and not seeing what's going on. Yeah. If you sit in your office every day and expect the problems to come to you, they won't. You've got to go and figure out what's going on. And you have to really seek to understand, like really truly understand what employees go through every single day. What are their struggles? What are their, what do they like? What do they dislike? Why are people leaving on a certain line? You need to go and seek to understand and make changes. I mean, they don't have to be drastic changes, but just small incremental changes that you can measure overall will go a long way and make huge differences in the lives of these employees.
Yeah. I like the seek to understand. I come from a retail background, even though I've been in staffing for 7 years. So I should say I come from staffing now. But, anytime someone come to me with a problem like, hey, I'm short on this product, or this planogram's not working, or I'm having this issue, I'd always say these two words: show me. Like, let's get up, show me what you're talking about. Let's go look at it. Or if they're like, hey, I just got this done, I'm really proud of my work. It's like, awesome, show me.
Yeah.
Let me go out there. And so it sounds like you kind of follow the same mantra. It's like, show me. Let me understand what you're trying to explain. Let's understand this turnover problem.
Yeah.
And you're going out there and diagnosing it.
And you know, when you ask someone, you know, help me understand this. I think production, you know, I think anyone, if you take a vested interest in what they do and what their problems are, they're thrilled to talk about it, right? They're thrilled to say, hey, actually, someone's going to listen to me. Someone really cares what our problems are, and they're going to try to fix it, right? You may not fix it, and it may take a while to fix it, but you're there and you're trying to understand, and you're there listening to them. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. You know, you're being a good listener. You're spending time with your employees. You're understanding their challenges. You're not afraid to get involved. You're not afraid to lead by example by getting out on the production line. And people see that. They see that you're committed to their well-being. You're committed to, you know, helping them be successful. And that has a huge impact on retention. You know, that reminds me, you know, the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, or I don't know if he still is or not, but, you know, he said, when you surround yourself by people who share a passionate commitment around a common purpose, anything is possible. And I think you've clearly demonstrated that in the environment at the companies that you've worked for. You know, you've surrounded yourself with people that want the same thing, and you want to improve people's lives. You want to improve culture. You want to, you know, and as a result, improve turnover. And you clearly, you know, demonstrate that, which I think is pretty neat.
Thank you.
A lot of good comments. Dave, you didn't get to read all your comments, but thank you. Emotional validation is a currency. Definitely agree. Do you know Dave by chance?
I do. Yeah. Hi, Dave.
Awesome.
He's awesome. Yeah, he's great.
And this has been an absolute treat. Again, we're in Q4. Turnover is definitely top of mind. People, it's hard to find people in Q4. So you're kind of stuck with what you have. And so if you can implement these strategies that Angie have shared today, and I think number one is just that empathy, seek to understand, get out there and really try to diagnose what's going on in your building with your team. Angie just shared a really cool best practice of, like, have a map of your facility with all the lines and departments, and put a sticker for every area where you've lost a person, and have different colors for different shifts. But more importantly, before you even put that sticker up, have a meeting every day on the people that you lost and why, and what are we going to do to prevent that moving forward. I think that is, you know, very simple, yet I think a lot of people have a hard time even executing. But, you know, leave it to Angie, you know, kind of learn from her failures and her successes, that these simple fixes, you know, the time she spent 1 hour on the floor on the production line saved her probably hundreds of hours of dealing with turnover. I think these are pretty simple things to implement, but they take probably a lot of focus to just go in there and diagnose the problem, and then put some action behind it. Is there anything else, Angie, that you'd like to share before we wrap things up?
No, just thanks so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Well, you were great, and I can't wait to have you back on again in the near future. And good luck, everyone out there, when it comes to Q4. And we'll end this podcast with this short message.
Thank you.
Six months ago, I get a call from Steve Farrell, who wants to talk about partnering with Yes for our labor needs. It would
change your approach to staffing.
Change my approach to staffing?
We're short on employees. Again. So we're going to have to shut down a line. Sorry.
I told him I've already used multiple agencies and have had headaches with each one. So my approach to staffing is just fine.
With multiple agencies, we thought we had our staffing needs covered.
I had negotiated a super low rate to save on labor costs.
And I could pursue my passions outside of work because I never had to stay overtime due to turnover, productivity, or training issues.
The agency sent quality people. Well, they sent people. Sometimes.
My love of language and lexicon languished.
I negotiated a super low rate.
Hey, the agency employees didn't show up, so we're short on staff again.
Bupkis. Curses. Fetch.
Hey, an agency sent an employee.
Do you have production experience?
I've produced YouTube videos. I'm hungry. When's my first break?
This is not sustainable. If you want happy customers and a healthy business, something's gotta change. So yes, we tried Yes.
Yes focuses on finding the right people for the right job.
Turnover is down, productivity is up.
Yes trains
Or onboards.
quality employees, ensuring they have the skills
Or proper work ethic.
our company needs to succeed.
Thrive.
Yes provides us with quality data so we don't have to juggle multiple agencies to fill our needs.
They could have doubled our rate.
No, they could not have.
Okay, maybe not doubled, but Yes's cost was cheaper in the end. They solved our problems, which were way more expensive than a few points on rate.
I'm just happy that Yes provides us with good people.
Great employees to fill our workflow gaps.
And Yes brings them fast.
Yes specializes in production, warehouse, manufacturing.
And I love that Yes focuses on workplace safety.
Yes also offers services like time clock and
Payroll services, forklift drivers, pickers, packers, general labor.
I like how Yes customizes their screenings to our needs.
I love that we've hired many Yes employees as
Short-term, direct hire, seasonal work, part-time, full-time,
and long-term members of our company.
I love partnering with Yes. No more gaps in production, and I can focus on efficiency without stressing about costs or people. Yes really has
revolutionize.
changed our approach to staffing. Our people are happy.
Your customers are happy.
And that makes me
Delirious.
happy.
Delighted.
Happy.
Thrilled.
Happy.
Cheerful. Gratified. Ecstatic.
Happy. He said happy.
Sunny. Jovial. Tickled. Pleased.
Happy.